Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So I did a project pan, so the makeup that I want to finish this year, and I also am gonna be doing a no book buy this year, no books, because looking at my library I just have too many books, and I just want to go through all of the books that I want to read this year. Do keep in mind I haven't read these books, so maybe it's a really bad book, but yeah, maybe this can encourage you to read, or also just read what you have in your library and not feel the need to just constantly be buying books. So yeah, let's get on with it. So the first section will be classics, and so the first book is Of Mice and Men. I think it's about the American dream, and I just find this whole idea and how it kind of infiltrated into society and created this unrealistic role, just the unrealistic beauty standard. I think it's just so interesting, and just it leads to people pushing themselves to achieve to limits which are not healthy, and it's ultimately trying to achieve something which is good for you kind of deteriorates your life. So the next book is The Kite Runner. I don't know anything about this book as well, but my mom, she told me to read. She said it was the best thing that she ever read, so I think that. Also, this book, look at this, it's massive. It's massive, but I think you see the font is it makes up for it. It's equally massive. And the next one is A Passage to India. The book is so pretty. Look at this. Oh, my Shayla. And you see it's a floppy book as well. But these are obviously not the reasons I want to read this book. I think that it's a passage, and I can use this idea of a journey to read it when I'm on some kind of journey in this year, because I like to match up my books to moments in my life. So because sometimes when I read books and say it's a book about I don't know, about France, and I'm sitting in the UK reading that, I'm oh, I wish I could just read this in France. Now I'm just getting FOMO for absolutely no reason. And then yeah, this will be on some journey. Linking to that, I'm going to read The Fellowship of the Ring. I think that this is the first book in the Lord of the Rings. Such a pretty book as well. What? It's also really long. It's 400 pages long, but it doesn't matter. I think I'm going to read this maybe on DV. It's a heavy book, but if I on some journey as well, reconnecting to nature, kind of all of these things. And the next one is To Kill a Mockingbird. Is this about, oh yeah, so this is about racism and rape, but I think it's just really important to learn about history and these awful things that have happened in society, to ultimately learn from mistakes, and just to be able to realize just that society is bad. There are awful people in the society, and you just need to realize that. It's really strange that there are only 6 books. This is in classics, because it's literally my favorite genre. It's not that I read a lot of classics, I read many different genres of books. It just I mean, yeah, I guess it would take me maybe longer, but I really love it because, I mean, they're all classics for a reason, but I just think, classics kind of explain the human condition, they're more likely to, and if you learn more about the human condition, you kind of learn more about yourself and the world around you. So yeah, so now I'm going to go on to the more contemporary but still fictional books. Oh, you can see it. The first one is The American Psycho. insane. Psychotic, some would say. But yeah, I heard it's like really disturbing. I literally started reading it one time, but then I was just like, I don't get what he's trying to say, like, I'm sorry. But the same thing happened with me this year. Like, I mean, I guess last year. But with The Bluest Eyes with Toni Morrison, like I started reading The Bluest Eyes. And then I was like, I don't understand what this book is saying, like, respectfully. So I stopped reading it. I started reading it again this year. I literally finished it in 2 days. To be fair, it's a short book, but it was such a good book. And it like taught me like it's fine to give up on books. Like, genuinely, it's fine. And if you have the will to like come back to that book, then you might actually read it again and like gain a new understanding from it and actually enjoy it. Like, that happened to me with The Man in the High Castle. I started reading it and then I just didn't really get into it, but I think I will come back to it in the future because like the whole like idea of it is really interesting. So the next one is The Norwegian Forest. I used to read a lot of like Japanese literature, but I don't know if it's because it's like translated into English, but it's, to me, it just doesn't really, like, personally, I don't really enjoy the writing style, but I think that it's just like a cultural difference at the end of the day. So I read Japanese literature, like I know, like, I mean, obviously they're all different, but I've never read Murakami, and she's really famous, so I just want to read that and also, like, expand my worldview. So the next one is The Underground Railroad. I don't know if this is a classic. This book was written in this book was first published in 2016, so I don't think that makes it a classic. But it's about racism and slavery, and I think it's in the US, like slaves trying to just escape. And I think that this is really important in like giving voices to, not really voices because it, like, they're probably dead now, but it's just an important thing to learn about. And I just think it's really important to learn about things like racism and like just marginalized groups in society, because it not only like says like obviously guys don't do this, but it also like shows a more general pattern of just like discrimination and like ostracization from society in general, not just because it's a general pattern. Like, it's not to just one, like, oh, only racism. Like, it happens to everything, to everyone. If you don't fit into this cookie mold, there will always be some form of stick in society. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's just what I personally believe. The next one is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I've had this book for ages, and I think that this is a bit of maybe like some fantasy or something, and I don't read fantasy, so I think that this will be an interesting book to read. So the next one is Dune. Oh my gosh. No, but I've been wanting to read this book for like literal years, but I haven't gotten around to it because it's just so long, and it's also a fantasy, so I'm gonna have to like learn all of the like things. But I've had very mixed reviews about it, but like my best friend thinks that it's a good book, so I'm going to trust her opinion. And finally, having read Dune, I can finally watch the film, and oh my god, like when both of the films came out, everybody was like, oh my gosh, go watch the film with me, like blah blah blah, the film's so good. I'm like, I read fast, then I watch the film. And it's like, most of the time, it's usually better in the book. And the last one is Butter. I think, yeah, it's a new book, and it's also Japanese. Like, hello, surprise, surprise. And I think that it's about the representation of like a woman in society and being blamed. And I just want to like learn more like women, like women, like learn more about that. And I think there's a sense of like crime, and it's a popular book for a reason. So I think this book contains like a mix of everything. And yeah, so there are 11 fiction books. Oh no, sorry, I mean there are like 11 books so far, like classics plus fiction. So the next section is one which I haven't read of a lot, like at all, because of like GCSEs and stuff, but it's actually Russian books. Like I haven't read in Russian for years, and it's important to like develop like my language, and obviously not to use it. And like Russia has like obviously like really good literature, and the fact that I have access to read it in its original form is like so nice. So the first one is Yevgeny Onegin by Pushkin. I've literally started it, but like I just need to finish it. The next one is Dr. Zhivago by Pasternak. I think it's about the Civil War, and I'm interested in history, but like in a personal sense, because like I don't actually like how it's taught in school, and I obviously like enjoy like the topics that I enjoy, and I'm interested in Russian history, like obviously being Russian. So this, and also to romance books, it's like a mix of everything. It's a classic, like basically it's just perfection. So the next one is Отцы и дети, Fathers and Sons by Ivan Turgenev. I think it's also about like a bit of like Russian history. It has some, but aren't all books written in the context of the time that they're written in? Maybe not. That's a story for another day. Next one is Lev Tolstoy, Смерть Ивана Ильича. So Ivan Tolstoy, and it's the death of Ivan Ilyich. I hope I said that correctly in English. I think it's a short book. I think there's just like a lot of I think it's a short story. Just there's a lot of like different stories in here. The next one is Filial by Sergei Dovlatov. I've read actually 2 of his books already, and yeah, no, like they're very interesting because they talk about like the third wave of immigration of Russian people, and it was to New York, and like when the Iron Curtain opened up after the fall of the Soviet Union, and people were leaving because they could, and because like they were scared of the tension in the Soviet Union. And oh wait, no, this was after the fall of the Soviet Union, I'm sorry, or I forgot. But yeah, it's just really interesting to see this, because I can relate being a first generation immigrant, but like their experience of like trying to form a community when being immigrants, you've had to leave all of your family behind, and just like being disconnected from that family, but also being disconnected in the environment that they live in, because they have to learn the language. And yeah, like they stick together, like they all kind of live in one area. And when I came to New York, you could see that, like this one place called like Brighton Beach. It's this Soviet just like place where a lot of just like Russian people and like just like people from Eastern Europe lived, and it's just really interesting to hear about, and like their take. And it's also sad because they've had to leave all of their like qualifications when they like come to a new country, because they're kind of like devalued as well. So yeah, this. And the next one is Anna Karenina. That's one long book. Oh, also by Lev Tolstoy. Yeah, this is just a classic. And so the last section is non-fiction books. I actually think this is the biggest section, and I can actually divide it up. So I'm going to divide it up into non-fiction, more like humanities, society, and history, and non-fiction like STEM, mostly mathematics. So the humanities section, so the first book is This Is Not America. It's about like racism in the UK, and I think it's really interesting because also last year I read the Lonely Londoners about like the Windrush, and it was the first book that like actually introduced me to the topic. I mean, obviously I've heard of Windrush, but like I never actually understood it, and it helped me like realize what it was. Oh, this sounds really bad, but yeah, like just like what it was, like actually what the whole event was. And it was really interesting and just like showing the opinions of these people. And I think that this book will discuss that, and I'm so interested in like Windrush. Like it's so interesting to me. The next one is, I think this is just like for general, for like my worldview, kind of like my understanding, and I love philosophy as well, so this is like, it's ethics in the real world. So it's 90 essays, and what I'm thinking of, I tried to do this last year but I gave up on like the second day. I would read one essay a day, so then I can get through it in 3 months and like have like something new every day. And you can see that it goes through like different topics, like big questions, animals, like the case for going vegan, life and death, like public health and pandemic ethics, sex and gender, doing good, happiness, politics, global problems, and so much more. And this just like covers an array. And like, you know, ethics is important, at least to me. Like to me it's a really important topic because I think it's kind of like the fundamental of how we present ourselves in society and like how we are in society. And if it's such an important like underlying thing about us, then shouldn't we be informed about it? Shouldn't we know and like be able to somewhat like understand how, like, what our choices stem from, like how we choose, and like maybe altering our decisions by gaining a new viewpoint about like what the impact that they have, or like the impact that they could have. And like ethics is this whole thing about good and bad, so I feel like if I learn more about ethics, then I can become, I think that morality is subjective, but like a better person, even though that might mean like a different thing for everyone. But to me, a better person in my eyes, like when I look back at myself at the end of this year, I want to be like, I learned more. And I think that by learning more about like society, I've learned more about myself, and I've ultimately been a better person and hopefully helped like influence other people to become similarly good. So the next one is Monsters. Oh my gosh, so interesting. What do we do with great art by bad people? And so pretty, so pretty. And it just talks about like the different like, yeah, just like it talks about this like really interesting question, and it goes through I think like the different like issues that can make somebody be like have a bad like rep in public, like a child rapist, a anti-Semite, like abandoning mothers, drunks, and just stuff like that. And I think it's really interesting because, you know, people always love to bring up that question. It's very much like dinner party question, like, oh, do you think you can separate the art from the artist? And if somebody says that to me, it can be like, I've read a book on this. If you ask me that question, then you prepare yourself for like a 1 hour like summarization of that entire book, because I've read a freaking book on the subject. So the next book is a history book. It's, oh my god, this intrigued me so much. It's called Goodbye Eastern Europe, an intimate history of a divided land. And obviously coming from Eastern Europe, I want to learn more. But by reading this book, I get to learn more than just like about Russia. I get to learn about like the entirety of Eastern Europe. And it's just very interesting, especially like with what's happening now. But it's just like important to know the history of things. And personally, I'm interested in Eastern European history and like a bit of UK history because it's what impacts me and it's what I see in my daily life. But it is obviously important to learn about like history of places like which you're not from. So the next is Letters of a Stoic by Seneca. I heard that this was like a really good book for like philosophy, and it's kind of like maybe like the foundations of philosophy. So I want to learn this to just like become more like philosophic. I also want to become more philosophic. I want to become a lot of things this year. And the next book is actually very interesting, The Sardinian Woman. And I think that it talks about just like the entire like ethics and the entire like idea of like pornography and their like effect on women, not like what I think it's talking about the presentation of women in pornographies and how it feeds into this like misogyny and putting women down and just bad. Okay, so the next and final section, officially the longest section, is my STEM books. It's mostly math books because I want to apply to uni to study maths. So the first one is actually finishing off this book, The Great Mathematical Problems, and this is such a nice book. Like, it literally gives you, I think it's like 7 math problems, but they're like stuff that like is now being researched. I mean, they all come from different places, but it's very, I think, interesting to me to gain more like an understanding of the different parts of maths in like higher like postgraduate like undergraduate kind of way. And this is a good like introduction to all of those things, and it allows me to like just gain like a general understanding of it, so then I can choose and like pick what I kind of want to look more into in my free time. So the next one is The Art of Statistics. I've had this for ages and I've just become more interested in data science and like, you know, data science, statistics, like, you know, statistics is based off data. So I think that this will be just like really interesting. And yeah. And then the next one is Infinite Powers. I think it's, the story of calculus. And I just love calculus. And it's just like so used in our world now with like optimization and stuff. So, and when I think like when you learn about the history of maths, it allows you to actually like understand the topic a lot more, because you're not just given like, oh, here's this theorem. No, it gives you the thought process behind that theorem. And as that person kind of explains and like discovers this theorem, they start from the very basics, because you can't just like, you know, there's no like middle, like there has to be a middle ground, and by learning about that middle ground you just gain like a greater like understanding than just like learning something like, oh, learn this. Like, no, you're like, no, I know the proof to this. I understand like where maybe like in nature this came from and stuff like that. So the next one, oh no, actually I was gonna say Paris, but I don't think I'm going to be going to France this year, so I want to save that book for another time. So the next one is Our Mathematical Universe. My friend gave this to me and I just wanted to read more about maths, I guess. Like, I think it's kind of the trend in these books because I want to learn more about maths. This is, I think it's a new book. I think they're kind of like advertising it a lot. I don't know if it means that it's really unpopular, popular, but it's Around the World in 80 Games, and it talks about like maths in games. So it's like I learn about new games which I can play with other people, and I can also be good at those games, and I can understand the theoretic maths behind them. So that's really interesting. The next one is Fermat's last theorem. It's just talking about how like that got discovered, because if I keep on going with the stack, it's literally going to cover my face. So the next one is the red web. It talks about just like censorship in Russia, and it starts from like the history, and it's so important to learn about censorship. Like, it's so disgusting. It's so disgusting, and it's not obviously not just Russia doing it. Like, if you've seen the book bans in the US, it's important to learn about it. Basically, it's kind of the whole premise of like my mantra. I don't know, like my belief. Like, I just want to know everything. That's it. And then the next I have How to Bake Pie. This is one of those books that I started reading, and then I really didn't like it, so I stopped reading it. But I started reading that book 3 years ago, so I think if I start reading it again now, I will actually understand it. And then the last book of this long video is this, Finding Fibonacci, and it's just the history of Fibonacci, and I think that the whole sequence is really interesting. And yeah, it's also like maths, history, and yeah. So thank you if you watched this video to the end. I hope that like and subscribe if you like this video, and like comment down below how many books you want to read. If needed, like I can share my Goodreads profile. Like, it's a really good profile. But yeah, this year I want to read 60 books. I think that all the books that I've shown this year, I think it's been less than 60. So if needed, I'll just get more books. And at the end of this year, like 2025 type of year, I will also, I think, talk through all of the books, hopefully more than 60, like 60 or equal, like 60 books that I read in this year. So all of these books are also really long, so I hope that like I actually do and don't just like give up. I better not. I believe in myself. If I believe in something, then it will get done, and I'm putting this on record. I will read 60 books, and most of them will be this. I will read most of these books, if not more. So yeah.